Okay, so get ready because today we're diving into a story. It's got this crazy mix of what ifs and celebrity encounters. We're going to unpack this wild story. It's about a woman from Sydney, Australia. Her name's Belle, and she had a chance meeting. It was with Kanye West back in the mid-2000s. And get this, the reason this encounter is so interesting is that Belle thinks she could have been the next Kim Kardashian if things had just gone a little differently.
Wow. It really makes you think, huh? About how these random moments can totally change your whole life. I want to hear more about this encounter.
Okay, so picture this. It's 2006, and Kanye's, at the top of his game. It's his stronger era. He's rocking those yellow shitter shades, the ones. And he's partying at the Ivy nightclub. It's in Sydney during his Australian tour. Belle and her friends are there too. And Kanye goes up to them, right? He's trying to figure out what they're doing after the party.
Oh, the Ivy. That place was the place to be back then. All the celebrities, the socialites, the super rich, they all went there. It must have been quite a scene.
Oh, totally. And get this, Belle didn't end up going with Kanye. But now she jokes, I could have been the next Kim. It's pretty funny. But it also makes you think, right? About all the paths we don't take and those sliding doors moments that change our lives.
Yeah. And it's especially interesting because Kanye did end up marrying Kim Kardashian, of course. And then later, after their divorce, he married Bianca Censori. She's Australian, and she worked for his Yeezy brand. It's kind of like Australia was always part of his story somehow.
It's wild, right? Like something out of a movie. Before we get too deep into all that Kanye and Kim stuff, there's this hilarious detail I have to tell you. So Belle was telling this story on a radio show, and the host, Kyle Sandilands, asks her, do you remember what Kanye's breath was like?
Oh, wow. Why would he ask that?
Well, there's this rumor that Kanye's titanium veneers, the ones he has, they might cause bad breath.
Ah, I see. So did Belle say anything about his breath?
She didn't really remember anything specific, but she did mention that he was way shorter than she expected.
Yeah, that makes sense. Celebrities seem larger than life, right? But then when you meet them in person, they're just, normal.
Exactly. And it makes you realize that even global icons like Kanye West are just regular people.
Yeah.
With their own quirks and maybe dental challenges. But what's really interesting is how this short encounter with Kanye really stuck with Belle. Even after all these years, she still wonders what might have been.
It just shows you how powerful those chance encounters can be. They stay in your mind long after they've happened, especially when it's with someone as famous as Kanye.
And it's not just the encounter, but the setting too, right? I mean, the Ivy has its own whole history and drama.
Oh, absolutely. And thinking about Belle's what if moment, it's interesting to consider what the Ivy represented. It was all about being exclusive. It was where the celebrities and socialites mixed. It paints a picture of a very specific social scene.
Totally. Okay, so let's talk more about the Ivy. What makes this place so fascinating and controversial? Especially in relation to Belle's story.
Well, let's start with the guy who owns it, Justin Hemmes. He's a billionaire, and he built a whole hospitality empire. The Ivy was like his masterpiece.
Yeah, he definitely created a certain image for the Ivy. It was like the symbol of Sydney's glamorous nightlife. But recently, things haven't been so perfect, have they?
Right. There's been reports about their exclusive bar. It's called Level 6. And, well, let's just say the stories don't exactly match that glamorous image the Ivy has worked so hard to build.
Yeah. From what I've heard, Level 6 is super secretive. And the reports suggest it's not just about having fun. It's about power and a whole different set of rules.
It's a weird contrast, isn't it? On one hand, you have Belle's story. It's all about this potential what-if moment, and it's pretty innocent, just a chance meeting. But then you have these Level 6 allegations, and they suggest a much darker side to this glamorous world.
Like two different stories happening in the same iconic place.
Yeah, and it really makes you think about all the hidden stories that probably exist, even in the most glamorous places.
Definitely. So we have this interesting backdrop, right? It's the Ivy with its celebrity glitz and all these whispered controversies. And against that, we have Belle's story. It's about this chance meeting with Kanye. And it still makes her wonder what if, all these years later.
What stands out to you about Belle's story so far? Is it the what if part, the celebrity part, or maybe the Ivy itself?
It's wild how all these different things come together. It creates this story that's both lighthearted and makes you think. It makes you wonder how many other almost was stories are out there, just waiting to be told.
Maybe you even have one of your own. Think about it. So, as we dig deeper into Belle's Almost Was story and the whole Ivy thing, it makes me think about like celebrity culture in general and how we're like obsessed with these what if stories, especially when it's about famous people.
Yeah, that's a good point. Why do you think those stories grab us so much? Especially,
Yeah.
when someone like Kanye is involved.
I think it's because we're just fascinated by celebrities, right? We see them everywhere, on screen, magazines, social media, and we make up these stories in our heads about them, like who they are, what their lives are like.
Yeah, it's like we're trying to imagine what we don't see.
Exactly. And then when we hear something like Belle's story, it's like, oh, we get to peek behind the curtain. We imagine ourselves in that world, even if it's just for a second.
And in this case, it's extra interesting because it's not just one celebrity, right? It's Kanye and Kim. Two huge names.
Yeah, it's like double the celebrity, double the fascination. We start picturing ourselves living their glamorous lives.
And then there's that whole sliding doors thing. Like, what if Belle had made a different choice? Maybe her life would be totally different. Maybe she'd be famous too.
It reminds you that life's full of surprises. These random moments can totally change your path.
Yeah. And even though you can't go back and change things, you still think, what if? You imagine those other possibilities. But going back to the Ivy, it's crazy how this place used to be all about glamour and being exclusive. And now it's caught up in these allegations about power and maybe not so great behavior.
Yeah, it shows that things aren't always what they seem. We get these ideas about certain places, right? But there's always more to the story.
For sure. And for Belle's story, it adds another layer, right?
Yeah.
Here she is meeting Kanye West at this super glamorous club. But maybe underneath all that, there's this whole other thing going on. Something not so glamorous.
It's like Belle's story is just one tiny part of the Ivy story. This place has seen so much. Parties, encounters, maybe even some secrets we'll never know about.
Yeah, it makes you think about all the different things happening in one place. Like, on the surface, the Ivy's all about glamour and exclusivity. But maybe underneath, it's about ambition, power struggles, all the messy stuff of human relationships.
And it makes you think, right, we got to look deeper. These places and the people in them are more complicated than they seem.
Absolutely. So let's go back to Belle for a minute. We talked about the what if and the Ivy. But what about Belle herself? What does her story tell us about how meeting a celebrity can affect you?
I think it shows that even a short meeting with someone famous can stick with you. It can change how you see yourself and what you think is possible. It's like a spark, It makes you wonder, what if that were me?
And it's not just about fame and money. It's about connecting with someone, even for a minute. Someone you admire or find interesting.
And that connection, even a small one, can stay with you.
Yeah. Belle's story makes me think about all those almost was moments we all have. Those times when you were almost part of something big, but it didn't happen.
I bet everyone listening has a story like that. Maybe you almost met someone special. Or you almost took a job that would change everything.
And yeah, sometimes you regret those missed chances. But there's something kind of cool about how unpredictable life is. The way things happen that you never expected.
It reminds you to be open to those unexpected encounters, to think about the what ifs, and to appreciate the journey wherever it takes you.
Because sometimes the most ordinary moments end up being the ones you remember, the ones that change how you see things.
And you never know, right? Maybe someday those almost was stories will be the stories you tell, the ones that make you smile and think about how crazy life can be.
Okay, so as we keep going with Belle's story and the Ivy, let's keep thinking about these things. Chance encounters, how celebrity culture works, and how those what-if moments stay with us.
What part of this story sticks with you the most? What are your own almost was moments? Let's talk about those as we finish up our deep dive into this story. It's a story about meeting celebrities and those unexpected turns that life takes.
So, as we wrap up Belle's story, I keep thinking about how celebrity, that whole thing is so fascinating and how it ties into our own lives. It's weird how we make up all these ideas about famous people and then we hear a story like Belle's and it's like, whoa, we get a peek into their world.
Yeah, it's true. Celebrity culture really grabs us, doesn't it? We see these people living these amazing lives and you can't help but wonder what it'd be like to be them.
And I think that's why Belle's story is so interesting. It's not just like, what if I was Kim Kardashian? It's about meeting someone, someone who's like a legend, someone everyone knows.
Yeah, like for a second, Belle's world and Kanye's world collided, and that one moment still matters to her, even years later. It makes you think about how many times that happens. Our paths cross with people who seem incredible, But really, they're just living their lives like us.
It really makes you think. Even someone like Kanye West, he's just a person. He has his own stuff, his own insecurities, maybe even his own what-if moments.
And it shows how connected we all are, right? We might not all meet Kanye West at the Ivy, but we all have our own stories, our own moments that change us.
Yeah, it's those little moments, those choices we make that make our lives what they are.
And thinking back on those moments, the what-ifs, that's what makes life interesting.
So as we finish up our deep dive, I hope you guys are thinking about how unpredictable life can be, how those chance encounters can be so powerful, and how cool it is that we all have our own stories to tell.
Remember, every time you meet someone, every choice you make, every what-if, it all becomes part of your story. Don't forget those moments. Think about them. Let them change how you see yourself and the world.
And who knows? Maybe someday you'll have your own almost was story, one that makes people curious, makes them laugh, makes them wonder about how crazy life can be. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time. Keep exploring, keep wondering, and always be ready for the unexpected.